All right, hey everybody. We're gonna do a full studio tour. I think we've already either done what's in my bag before this video or after the video, but I also wanted to give you guys a full studio tour, so we'll get right to it. Before I go downstairs and show you my current studio, I wanted to show you how I started, so let's go check it out. This is a very small, essentially glorified closet that we have in the house on the second floor. I don't live in a big house. It's like a 1,700 square foot house. And when I started my business and wanted some space to work with, this is how I got started. So some of you guys who are thinking that you need a big studio with all this equipment, that's not true at all. I started here with one camera, I think maybe 2 or 3 lenses from when I was doing more event, portrait, wedding type of stuff. And this is where I got started doing real estate. I did a lot more cold calling, emailing, marketing in this office, and this office is actually where I made my first 6 figures. So I just want to give you guys a good square idea of how it gets started. It's not big equipment, it's not expensive spaces, it's just hard work, dedicated time, and consistency. And this is, like I said, where I got my first 6 figures. I haven't been up here in a while. I'm only up here if I need to print off something or something. It's a mess, but I still wanted to show it to you. I have a few old relics up here that I don't use anymore. I really am kind of embarrassed about how messy it is, but like I said, I'm just not up here much. We've got an old lens, a fisheye Sigma lens, 8mm, that I was thinking about using for Google business tours. They still do those, but it was an option. I considered one at a time. This is a broken 16 to 35mm 2.8 L series lens that I got an insurance claim on. I'm going to go ahead and grab that lens cap because I could use that on other lenses. And then a lot of the rest of it is just junk equipment that I don't use anymore, so I don't bother to keep in my studio. But being up here has me a little bit nostalgic, so I'm gonna take this because this guy's kind of like my roots, so I'm gonna bring him where he belongs. All right, I'm not sure if you guys know who this is, but this is the Chief. Spartan 117, baby. All right, let's head downstairs. So actually, before I wanted to head back to the studio, I also wanted to give you guys an accurate picture of what my house looks like. Just because I make some money, a lot of it goes back into the business, into other investments like my mountain house that we use as a short-term rental. For example, looking down here, you can see a hole in the floor. This is from where we knocked out a wall, which, you know, was a little bit of investment into the house, but we wanted to save a little bit of money, so we just kept the floor as it was, and then eventually we will replace the floor. For now, that's what it looks like. You'll notice an extension cord here. This extension cord is for our microwave because when we got this wall taken out, it messed up some of the electrical stuff, and the outlet for the microwave doesn't work anymore, so we have to, anytime we want to heat something up, pull it over here, start the microwave, and then on the lighting stuff here, if I turn off this light, it works, but if I try to turn off the kitchen light, which is behind the camera there, it also turns this light off. So it needs some work. We're by no means living grand, even though we could, because we have the money to do that. It's just a mindset that you need to have when you're running your own business. The next check you get might be your last. I mean, obviously we're building it, so we hope that doesn't happen, but you've got to move forward with a very conservative financial attitude. Don't be thinking you're gonna be driving Lamborghinis and exotic cars. I could probably buy 1 or 2 very nice cars. I don't do it because I would rather invest that, have a savings fund, and make sure my finances are rock solid. I suggest you do the same. So without further ado, let's take a look at the studio. Come on in. So this is the basement. When I originally got here and bought the house, it was one of the main selling features that I wanted because I could totally see that one day I could use this for a flex space where it'd either be for cars or for photography, and it ended up being for both. So originally when I got this, there was a wall here, a wall back there. I didn't hire it done. I just used manpower and hours of my time, blood, sweat, and tears, removed all of it. I had to hire a dumpster that was just placed in my driveway. We filled it all the way to the top. Insulation, I think 2 different walls I knocked out, and then after that I had a contractor come in and put up drywall, run electricity down here, and then paint the walls blue and the ceiling black. Overall it cost me about $5,000, which I think is a great deal considering how much money I'm saving on an actual space. Also, it's adding value to my house, so I raised the value of my home while saving money in my business, so that is fantastic. Let's go ahead and go around here. I'm going to put him in his new space. where he belongs. I'll have to clean his helmet up later. But I'm very happy with this space overall. One thing I would do differently if I could do it all again would to be paint my walls white rather than dark blue. Not sure why I was thinking that. Growing up, I had a room in my house that all us kids kind of played in all the time, and it was dark blue, and I think that's where I got the color from. Anyway, so this is all pretty good. The only other major expense it was to finish this was the split heater, which costing me for the heater and having it installed, because I wasn't gonna mess around with that myself, ended up being $6,000. So I think I paid a little bit for that. It's been fantastic. I wouldn't have it any other way. All right, so this space you might recognize. This is where I shoot all of my tutorials and of course where I edit. And recently I've also hired on a full-time employee. I built a computer for him. So right behind you here is that computer. We're gonna go talk about all of this equipment, all of these monitors in a second. But first, let's get to the lenses and equipment, which I'm sure you guys are excited for. So without further ado, we'll get to the juice of this video, which is all of the equipment, including my light modifiers, camera bodies, lenses, prices, everything that I have in my studio and own currently. This is after years, I think 7 or 8 years of slowly acquiring equipment just from jobs that were paying for the equipment themselves, or because I needed it for a specific project of my own. So this isn't, I paid for all this stuff in cash. I didn't borrow on the credit card. I didn't take out personal loans. This is just really hard work, nothing from family members or daddy or mommy, all right? So don't bother annoying me with all that nonsense. Anyway, let's get started. I can't remember all the prices of all this stuff off the top of my head, so what I'm gonna do is put up the price in post right here with a little sound effect so you guys can see how much this stuff costs, at least for the major stuff. But what I'm gonna do is just show you the equipment that I have, why I have it, and what I use it for. The way I organize this all is I have the top shelf for lightweight things. If it were to fall, it's not gonna damage itself or me. So all this stuff is just light modifiers. I already have a light modifier on a light by my computer, so I'll show what it looks like unfolded and installed. But I've got 3 giant soft boxes and 2 pretty big light strips that I use and set up for various purposes. And of course, right here we have C-stands, light stands, video tripods that I have for making sure I can do that. It is very important if you have large equipment that is gonna have those large soft boxes, because essentially those soft boxes, especially if you're outside, are gonna act as a giant sail on a sailboat and blow right over. So having these really big light stands with a C-stand mount, or a base on the bottom is what they're called, is an absolute must. If you get one of those cheap light stands and throw up an expensive light, you're just asking for it to be damaged. In fact, I've even had one of these big light stands blow over one time on a shoot. Luckily though, the softbox was so big, it acted as slowing down the light as it fell, so it didn't break. I still use it to this day. But anyway, that is the light modifiers, light stands and tripods. Let's start next with the camera bodies. I'll start with the oldest first. This is a Canon 6D. I originally, before I had Canon, had a Nikon D3100, and then I switched to Canon several years ago. After I switched platforms, I realized switching platforms is kind of wasted time and money. So ever since then, I've stuck with Canon. Not because I don't think Sony or other platforms are better or worse, it's just that I realize they're always competing with each other. One year, one's gonna be better, and the next year, the other one's gonna be better. So just stick with your brand, stick with what you're good at, stick with what you know, and ultimately your equipment doesn't decide the quality of your work, you do. So do what you're good with and you're familiar with. Anyway, this camera is, I think, 7 or 8 years old, but this thing has been through its paces. You can see on the back here that it's been cracked on the screen. There's parts missing on the top. This is also, to this day, what I still shoot all of my real estate with. And I have a second camera because back in the day I was an event photographer, so I would have 2 cameras on me at all times with lenses so I could switch in between the 2 real quickly. Now they function as primary shooter and secondary shooter, so we can go out, shoot, 12, 15 homes in a day, no problem. And we're also available twice as much. If you guys think you need big, expensive cameras to get stuff done, you're wrong, because when we're shooting for real estate specifically, the MLS and all the other selling platforms like Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, all those other things are just crushing your images anyway. So getting like a 50 megapixel Sony camera to do HDR blending or flambient stuff so it can look really good is kind of an overkill because the image quality is going to be reduced atrociously anyway. Just get a camera that can do the settings and actions that you need to do the process and editing that you need and get it to the client quickly. So this is what I use for all my real estate. I don't use these for video or anything else. This is my EOSR. I upgraded to the EOSR. I don't use this for any real estate shoots. The reason I got this is because I needed a secondary video camera, and I also needed something to help me really nail that tack sharp focus for headshots. This has fantastic eye detection, so I can shoot headshots at 1.8 aperture or even 1.4 aperture and still have beautifully sharp eyes on the headshots, and then the depth of field just falls away right after that. I can get some very high-end looking shots with some of these other lenses that we'll go over with right now. What's not pictured here, because it's actually being shot with right now, is my dedicated video camera, which I bought for video, and that is my Canon 1DX Mark II. I bought it a while ago. There's been other cameras that have come out that are probably better, like the Canon R5, but truthfully, the 1DX Mark II has everything I need. It's got 4K 60, it can shoot 120 frames per second at 1080p. It's got fantastic CMOS dual pixel autofocus. I don't need to upgrade it. It does everything that I need. It's filming this video right now. So with video interviews, tours of houses with realtors, whatever you can imagine, that camera does just fine for. So I don't see myself upgrading for a while, because the only time I upgrade a camera body is because that camera body does something all of the other camera bodies I already own cannot do at all. I need a 4K 60 camera. The 1DX Mark II was that. Speaking of something I just recently purchased, is the most expensive piece of equipment I have ever bought, and that is the FREEFLY Wave camera. This is a super slow motion camera, and I actually haven't gotten the chance to use it yet because I need to get a adapter for the Sony E mount to the EF mount. But this is an $11,000 camera. I don't have to look this one up, and it's got a 2 terabyte interior SSD, and the reason I bought this is because I'm going to be doing some really cool slow motion shots from the air. We're going to make a little drone for this to fly, and I'm also going to, if you've bought this course and you're seeing this video, it's because you saw some really cool slow motion shots of you know, I don't want to spoil anything, but I want to punch somebody in the face with a punching bag, with a punching glove, if the ad guidelines will allow it. So if you are seeing this video, it's because you bought the course and you saw that ad, and this camera made that possible. So anyway, that is the FREEFLY Wave camera. All right, so that's, I believe, all the camera bodies I own. I don't think I've forgotten any. We're gonna move on now to the lenses. This is a LAOWA 12 millimeter, I believe. Yeah, I think it's 12 millimeter. It doesn't have any autofocus. You also have to set the aperture manually. But the reason I have this is because when we usually shoot real estate photos, we have a 16 to 35 millimeter lens. It's what everybody's used to when you shoot real estate. So when I shoot real estate video on the 1DX Mark II, it actually has a 1.3 crop factor. So if I were to shoot a 16 millimeter to 35 lens on the 1DX Mark II, the 16 would be cropped to 1.3, which would be like 19, 20 millimeter, which isn't fantastic. So I want that 16 millimeter look. So having this 12 millimeter times 1.3 gets it closer to that 16 millimeter look. So that's what I have it. It's exclusively for real estate video. I like to set these up in order of widest to largest. My next lens here is a 16 to 35 mm 2.8 L series version 2. I also have a version 3, which is on the 1DX right now shooting this, but this one is pretty old. The autofocus isn't working fantastic on that. So I use this lens for real estate photography only, and I have the better lenses for my employees. Next one is the 24 to 70 2.8 L series lens. If you're seeing a theme here, yes, I try to get Canon lenses for all of my Canon bodies. They just work better than third-party lenses, and I do have the money to do it, so why not? That being said, if you guys want to get some Sigma or Tamron lenses, especially Sigma is doing fantastic, and you can save some money that way. But I use the 24 to 70 for non-real estate shots, or sometimes I'll use it for detail shots on a shoot where I want to get a little bit closer or have a little bit longer focal length to get a higher end look in the photo. 50mm 1.2 is mostly for detail shots on my video. The 1.2 aperture is actually, even with the automatic eye detection on the EOSR, really difficult to get super sharp images because the depth of field is so shallow, it's hard to hit even with automatic eye detection. So I don't use this for photos that much at 1.2. I do love the 50mm look for some headshot sessions, so I'll shoot it like 1.8. If I'm really feeling confident, I'll go to 1.4, but then it gets a little bit shady as far as consistency with the focus. So the reason I bought the 1.2, for some reason, when I shoot on the 1DX or the EOSR with the 1.2 aperture set at 1.2 aperture, the video focus is just fine. So I can get some very nice looking shots at 1.2 aperture as long as I'm shooting video, which is interesting. The next lens is probably my favorite lens for shooting people headshots, and that's my 85mm Canon 1.8. This isn't an L series lens, but I prefer this for headshots over any of my L series lenses. Highly recommend it. It's also fairly cheap. I think this is less than $200. And then this is the mammoth that I used to use, the 70 to 200mm 2.8 L series. This is version 1. This is old, but this is what I used to shoot all of my events with back in the day. My weddings, corporate shoots. It's just a fantastic, fantastic looking lens. I know a lot of people across a lot of industries love this lens, whether it be wildlife, events, automotive photography, and including headshots. I still use this for some headshots. The longer the focal length you can get, generally speaking, in my opinion, the nicer it looks, the higher end it looks. So if you want to get 200mm shot, let's say of a group of people, this is a good way to make it look high end. Apart from that, I'm not going to go over too much. This is a Tamron speed booster. I was doing some like moon shots. This is a 2X, so I turned my 200mm into 400mm, but that was for the Eclipse. But apart from that, I think that's pretty much all of my lenses. Let's move on to some other things. Actually, one lens I did forget here, and that's because this is a very specialty lens that I don't use that much, but this is the LAOWA 24mm probe lens, and it's still in the packaging because I've only used it like once or twice, but you will also see shots from this in the ad that I'm putting out where we're just shooting inside some of the computers and seeing all the detail within there and the dust in there. But this is how I get some of those really, really cool shots. But honestly, you really shouldn't be using this unless you're doing some type of product or macro photography or video. In my opinion, this isn't worth the money. In fact, if we want to review the camera bodies real quick in regards to which lenses have made me the most money, easily these 6Ds have made me the most money from all. I mean, these 6Ds will easily make me $1 million by the end of their lifetime. The EOSR has made me several thousand from headshots and all the people work that I do. The lens is 16-35mm is the most valuable. 12mm LAOWA would be next, and then the 24 to 70, the 50mm to 85. They pay for themselves. I don't know. In real estate, they're more just kind of like extras, not requirements. All right, so moving on into this shelf, I've got a bunch of filters. This includes CPL filters, ND filters, variable ND filters. I'm not going to pull these out and show each one to you. They're at various millimeters so that we can fit them on different lenses and so forth. So those are my ND filters. Moving on, I've got some, what are these called? Telemeters. They help me do long exposure, time-lapse type of shots. And this is really how you do it the right way. You don't want to necessarily take video or something and just speed it up. You can get much higher quality doing that type of stuff. And I think I've already mentioned this, but this is all my video stuff. This is all my audio stuff, and then cases down here. Continuing on, I've got some 4K monitors. This is for when I'm doing tutorials specifically, and I need to see myself. I never had a huge rig for doing video work in real estate where I had monitors on top and it made it look, you know, overbuilt in my opinion. I just use a Ronin S, which is also being used right now. That's a gimbal that I have that's not here because it's there. And I use a 1DX. I use the back of the screen for that. And if I need some audio help, I have the TECHNICA wireless transmitter, which we're using right now to record this audio. This monitor specifically is only when I'm doing pretty simple tutorials and I need to set up the camera and see the framing with myself in it, because this monitor is specifically for when I have nobody else helping me and I'm framing the shot and I'm making sure everything is working appropriately. Here we have some batteries for all the monitors, and And also for some of the podcasts that I do, I needed to extend the recording time for my DSLRs because they're limited to 30 minutes. I like doing long form podcasts, which are 2 hours to 3 hours. And these are external recording monitors, Ninja 5. So we connect an SSD to this so that it records to the SSD. And I also have it so that it plugs into the wall so we don't have to worry about battery power. And I have 2 of those so that we can have 2 cameras recording the podcast. Here is another stabilizer that I have. This is not battery power. This is just the old-fashioned GLIDECAM. I do love using this one, just like I love driving a manual car. You just feel more connected to the camera and to the shots. And also, if you're doing things like events and other things, this is, in my opinion, the gimbal to use. Apart from that, I use the electronic gimbals, and they give me very consistent results. On this shelf, the only things that are left would be my speed lights. I have not used these speed lights in a good long time, but I use these mostly for when I got started shooting flambient and that sort of thing. But also before that, I was using them for events. And I would also double up, before I had the better lighting systems for headshots and things, I was using speed lights with some shady softboxes. And these got the job done, but honestly, I don't use these too much anymore. This is a YONGNUO transmitter and receiver for the speed lights, and then the speed light themselves are a 430 EX2. I have 2 of them. I think I used to have 3 of them and one of them broke finally. But the 2 that I have left work great, and honestly, I could still use them for headshots if I wanted to. They're a good option. All right, so that's all of the video stuff. Let's move down one shelf next to the audio equipment. On this side is not audio. This is kind of like my accounting department, my office stationery, some clamps, zip ties, and that sort of thing. Some battery chargers, wires, you know, USB-C, HDMI to HDMI type of stuff. Some more battery chargers. Here's a TASCAM audio recorder, which is fantastic. Ideally, I would love to have an Audio-Technica lav mic that transmits directly to the camera, because they don't have to sync everything in post. It can take some time, and sometimes it can be a disaster getting to sync it all. In case you have just multiple people, multiple audio sources, and one camera source, and you just need to stack it all on top of each other, these TASCAMs do a great job of that. They recorded at 2 different audio levels so that you can never have anything peaking, and you just essentially press start recording, and these things record for days if you wanted them to. Next mic that I never use anymore, I only used it a few times before I switched to a lav mic, is an on-camera Rode mic. This just picks up way too much stuff. It's not clean audio. You can repair it and remove a lot of the background noise, but these lav mics are the way to go. So either have a lav mic that you can buy for $15 on Amazon that runs directly to your camera with a very long cord, or spend $200 or $300 and get a wireless one, and it just solves all of your issues with audio. Here's some mics that I specifically use for interviews and podcasts. These are Shure mics. They require like a cloud booster to really get them nice, and then I record them here on an H6 Zoom audio recorder. There's an alternative mic that's like an H1C1 or something. I don't remember the serial code off the top of my head, but I highly recommend the other mics. These are like $300 mics, and in my opinion, they're not that much better than a lav mic. So go with a cheaper, I think $100, a little bit over $100 option that everyone recommends. Just look up Shure mic versus, and then whichever mic comes up next is the one that you actually want. I would not recommend these, but I've already bought them, so I got them. Here in these packs are just more TASCAM lav mics for, like I said, when you have several audio sources that you need recorded. This actually belongs on this top shelf because it's a video thing, but this is a DJI Pocket 2, I believe. Yes, a DJI Pocket 2. Don't judge me for having this little thing. Some of the realtors just want basic Zillow walkthroughs, nothing special, no high production editing or music. So if they want that, it's $100, and I bought this so that we can just zoom through it. And I do zero editing on it at all. I upload it to my computer, I make sure there's no sound, and I send it to the client, and I get paid $100 a pop for it. So this is a case for the Osmo or the Pocket 2. I think this is all the stuff on the audio shelf. Moving down here, I have my bag, which I'm gonna go over if I haven't already in my what's in my bag video tutorial. And then we have the Matterport. This is a really old box for the Matterport, but in case anybody has never seen a Matterport before, this is the original box it came in, and you can see how long I've been doing Matterport because this box is so old. Another case has been ordered, but this is what the Matterport looks like. It's a giant brick of a machine, and You stick this on a giant tripod, video tripod, you plant this down, it scans the area, you pick it up, plant it down, and you do it like 30 or 40 times per house. And then we have a dedicated iPad that's like an iPad. I don't know how old this iPad is, but it's one of the original iPads, but it works. So like I said, if I don't need to replace it, I'm not gonna do it. All right, so that's most of the audio equipment. Moving on, of course, we do have some drones here. We've got a MAVIC Air 2 ordered now because we've got 2 full-time things. Our schedule's filling up to that next level, and sometimes we both need the drone at the same time. But up to this point, I've been using the MAVIC Pro 2, which is great, super high quality video. It's much better than the Inspire 1 that I started with back in the day, and it's got the Hasselblad, I think 1-inch sensor. The 4K video is very nice, like I said, but it only shoots at 30 frames. Honestly, I don't need anything higher than that because the drone's moving so slow at such a wide angle anyway. But I'm pretty excited that even though the MAVIC Air is a little bit lower quality in the sensor, it can shoot at 4K 60 and 1080p 120, which will get us some cool shots. So this is nice. MAVIC Air 2 would be just as good for whatever your purposes are. If you even want to do, was it called the MAVIC Mini or whatever else, that would also do all right. We used the MAVIC Mini for a shoot or two to test it out because the MAVIC Air wasn't in the Best Buy. I returned it. I want the MAVIC Air instead. So I would go with the MAVIC Air. Anyway, so that's the MAVIC Pro 2. Now we are done with these shelves. Let's move on to this next one. So this is all of my big hardware that I have for lighting or other interviews. We have the RHINO slider motorized here. I've got the long metal rail and then also the carbon fiber shorter rail. After owning both, I really recommend just getting the shorter rail. Very rarely do I ever use that super long metal rail unless I'm doing like a time lapse or something. But time lapses are only for my own personal projects. The rest is lighting equipment. So I've got the APUTURE 120D cases here. All my APUTURE 120Ds are on the other side of this wall. We'll look at those in a second. And then I've got the APUTURE Mini, I think 20C and 20D lights. This is the case for that. And then I have the next one we want to look at is not constant lighting for video, but this is lighting for photography that I use for headshots and things. Right, so this is the lighting I use for my photography. This is the FLASHPOINT XPLOR 600 Pro TTL. The TTL is nice. It's essentially through the lens type of capabilities. I never really use that. I actually shoot on manual most of the time when I'm doing headshots where your shutter speed is above 1/250, then you can do that with high speed sync. So essentially as the shut, I'll explain this more later when we go into the headshot section. But essentially as your first curtain opens and your second curtain closes on the shutter, you're gonna have banding in your shot unless you have high-speed sync where the flash is making multiple flashes as the curtain moves down. And anyway, you can shoot at 1/2000th of a second with very, very shallow depth of field, 1.4 aperture type of situations, and still have that off-camera lighting, which is the bee's knees when it comes to professional-looking headshots. I'll go over all that in depth later, but FLASHPOINT XPLOR 600 Pro is the way to go. Finally, we get down to the ground floor level. We have the WESTCOTT EYELIGHTER. I never tear it down. I just constantly have it here because it actually fits pretty well. I've got brackets for an on-the-wall backdrop. So I'll be able to switch these in. It's, the kind of thing where you can lower a backdrop or raise a backdrop and lower a different one. I think this has 3 or 4 backdrops on it. It's the mounts for it anyway. Here I have some Lazy Susans for product video or product photo. Just helps me get things done easier. In this case, I've got some pyrotechnics. This is for shots that you'll probably also see in the ad, and also some long exposure fire stuff I like to do for automotive photography that I don't really do anymore. But back in the day, it was really cool. And if you want to see this relic, we'll bring this over this way. This is my old Inspire. It still works if I wanted it to, but this is how I got started with drone work. After I moved to the MAVIC Pro 2, I couldn't get this thing sold because nobody wanted it. It still works fine, but I ended up selling all the batteries and accessories for it, but could never sell this. I'm just happy to have it around. It's nice. Maybe we'll put this up on the shelf too for decoration. Anyway, that's the Inspire 1. That is essentially all the shelves. I've got some extra uniforms and stuff. Another thing I have is these hold fast gear stuff. This is back in the day from when I used to do more events. but I still use it like when I'm doing headshots and things. Moving back into this is a interesting calendar format that I love because it just helps visualize your year a lot better, where 1 month is in one giant line. So you really see how your time is ticking away and it motivates you. Anyway, I put various goals on here that I want. Very small, you can't really see them, but they're there. We're looking for a launch date here on that calendar. You may have seen up in my old office, I had a little whiteboard. This is something I installed recently. This is now glass, very nice, high quality to use, and we do use it very intentionally. Some people think that running a business is, man, you know, you're just so lucky to be able running a business. I can guarantee you it is not by accident. This is where I do all of my market research, so I know exactly how well I'm doing compared to previous years, and I also keep track of how much volume and everything is going in the local real estate market, because I want to know how much market share I have in the market. I'm doing as well as I could be, and we set various goals and everything else, put them up here, and we work every day, every hour to accomplish those, broken down with processes. So keeping track of that on this whiteboard is just really good. Here is a look, by the way, I know I just showed you the case. This is the APUTURE LS Mini 120D. This is what I use to light all of the background shots of all my tutorials, and if I'm doing interviews on site somewhere for somebody else, this is what I use. For my key lights, I do use the APUTURE 120Ds. This is these giant soft boxes I'm talking about. This is how I can get those super even lighting on my face. I'm not sure what the settings will look like if I do this. Does it look all right? Anyway, it's bright, as you can see from me being blown out. It gets the job done. With these lights, I can set it down to, you know, ISO 100, get the best quality off the sensor as possible. And anyway, it's the quality systems. All right, something that is cool that you might want to check out, I'll bring these into the light. This is actually something I got into recently thanks to James, my recent assistant, and he introduced me into the FPV world, and I originally wasn't too sure about it all because I didn't see how I was gonna be able to use it for real estate. But the shots you can get from an FPV drone are unbelievable. We're building a 7-inch drone now so we can put that super slow motion camera on it now. There's going to be some big things that come from this department thanks to James. So and we're gonna be covering a section on this in the course. So stay tuned, this stuff is awesome. As far as the other FPV stuff goes on that shelf, we've got a GoPro. I use the GoPro Hero 8, I believe, because it does everything the 9 does, it just has less screens. See, we've got some DJI goggles. I do like the digital goggles because I'm spoiled and I like the better vision. And we've got a backpack to hold it all, and that's pretty much it on the on the FPV drone section, but that is the FPV drone department. Let's move on to the studio here. This is just kind of like soundproofing stuff. You can just look up soundproofing on Amazon and buy a case of these for not that expensive. This is actually a custom metal thing I got off of. I looked everywhere to get a pretty decent result that didn't cost me thousands of dollars, and I have found the place to go to get custom made stuff that's high end that you don't want to pay a fortune for is EXII. So if you want a sign like this or any other creative type of thing you can possibly imagine, I highly recommend checking out EXII to see if somebody out there who's got the skills and is running a business on the side can help you out with that. All right, so without further ado, we will next get to the computer. All right, so we just switched the lighting over to the studio thing. It should look a little bit more familiar to you here. I just want to go over the computers that I have. We're going to be going over this, of course, very specifically later. Essentially what I have off the top of my head, if I can remember this all, I built both of these computers myself, researched them all. So we have an ASRock X99 motherboard with an Intel i7 6-core processor and 32 gigabytes RAM. We've got a GTX 970 in this. I built this 4 or 5 years ago, and I built it because I wanted to save money from purchasing a more expensive Mac, and it has been fantastic. I think if I were to buy a similar spec'd Mac at the time, it would have cost me around $6,000, and this one cost me less than $1,500. So it was a great choice. I would highly recommend it. It's got an SSD 500 gigabytes memory, like hard drive. That's one thing I do regret. I wish I had got something a little bit larger. So that's why I have these hard drives, these external hard drives sitting here, because I'm constantly editing stuff and then dumping them onto the external hard drives so that I have enough room to process stuff on my 500 gigabyte hard drive. So when I built, and then I have 2 ProArt series monitors for color accuracy. When I built a new computer recently, let's go check this out. I decided to go all out because, first of all, I was welcoming a new employee, my first employee, onto the team for the first time. I wanted to make him feel super welcome, spoil him a little bit so that, you know, he was happy to work here. So I got him actually 2 32-inch 4K monitors to work on, which is plenty of real estate, no pun intended, to work when you're working. I also built him the Mammoth computer. I tried doing a tutorial on this computer specifically when I built it. I've got the footage. I'm not sure if I can edit through it though, because it was just miserable. Trying to edit or film a computer build on my own while also building it was real pain. So I don't think I'm gonna do that. So what I'm probably gonna do is build a third computer for me over there. That's not gonna be quite as nice as this one. But anyway, getting to the nuts and bolts of this, this has a Intel i9 processor on a Asus Maximus 12 motherboard. We've got 128 gigabytes RAM and 4 terabytes of SSD memory space on the computer. And then we've got the RTX 3090 Founders Edition. So I actually am really proud of this build. And of course, because it's such a nice build, I had to get a nice case for it. And I think I've got like 12 RGB fans in there. We don't always have them on the rainbow stuff, but the motherboard is so new that there's no updates so that the motherboard can control the RGB stuff, because the motherboard is so new and out in the market. They haven't made those software updates to it. But it'll be there eventually. We'll put some cooler colors on there. But I think without further ado, that is the entire studio. I'm gonna show you a few more things here because people probably ask. Of course, I know a lot of people will be asking why I have 3 cars in my studio. So now that all the regular photography stuff is done, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a huge car guy. I love Datsuns, and I've got 3 cars apart from my daily drivers. This is one I picked up for just 900 bucks. It's a 1972 Datsun 240Z. This is going to be my next project. This is 0% done, but I've got a lot of parts for it back here. I've got Voke TE37 vintage rims, 16 by 9.5, that are gonna look fantastic. We're gonna really have to fit them into the wheel wells just perfect. We're also gonna throw a 2JZ DETT engine in there eventually once I get to it. But first I've gotta finish this project here. This project is about 80% done. I haven't worked on it in a while though, because I've been working on this course. This is a 1971 Datsun 240Z, and it was actually my wife's car when I met her, and it is still her car, but I'm working through it not only because she loves the car, because it's a family heirloom of her family's. So it's under my care, and we've repainted it, redone it from the inside out, and just got to reassemble some of the parts, redo the interior, then it'll be good to go. Complete restoration. The final car I have over here, I know that I talk about being frugal and not buying depreciating assets, but my wife graduated with her doctorate and ended up graduating with no student loan debt. Originally the plan was for me to pay off the student loan debt as she was working through it, but she ended up doing so well in school that she got scholarships from the state and from the college, and all the money we had saved up to pay for her student loans ended up not having to be used. So we didn't buy a Lamborghini, we didn't buy a Ferrari or a McLaren or something, but we did buy a $26,000 BMW M Coupe, which has actually appreciated in value. It's a 2006, and we paid for it in cash. So if you're gonna do something like that, I recommend it. And this wasn't something for me, it was something for her. And I tend to spoil people I love. So anyway, that's something she discovered, and that is her car as well. And I guess, you know, a piece of equipment we should also go over is the vehicle that I chose to travel in. This is my Subaru WRX hatchback. It is all-wheel drive vehicle. The reason I love this is because you can fit a bunch of stuff in here. I have never had an issue, even when I have to carry a ton of stuff out of my studio, including the kitchen sink. It all fits in here, no problem. So I highly recommend either an SUV or a hatchback of some kind where you can put the seats down and fit a lot of stuff in. The WRX actually isn't known for its reliability, but being a car guy, just make sure I watch the oil and other things. It also isn't the most mileage per gallon type of vehicle. It's got about 150,000 miles on it now. The next car I get probably will be something a little bit more economical. At the time, when I was a little bit young and wanted something sporty, but also something a little bit more practical and professional, this was a great choice. Hopefully you guys would do something the same. I really recommend something like a Honda or Toyota SUV that gets pretty good gas mileage, maybe not great towing capacity, but it has a lot of storage space and something you can use to just get the places you need to go reliably and affordably. All right, the last thing we got here is that a dead bug? The thing we're gonna be talking about here is the little workout section I got. I was using this a lot more before 2020, but the 2020 stuff kind of got in my head. I stopped working out and I gained some Rona weight. This is where I, kind of work out. I don't have a membership at the gym because I think it's a waste of money. Plus, I have such limited time. Traveling 10 or 15 minutes to a local gym to try to work out is gonna guarantee me never working out because I don't have the time. So just having a short workout here where I can get the things done with a Fitbod app that I got, eating healthy, tracking my intake of food and calories, and having things like this to work out with is great. Plus, it kind of looks cool for the studio. And truthfully, when you guys have those manipulative, painful clients, having a little bit of a punching bag where you can give the old 1-2, and this is actually a kickboxing one, so you can kick it too, is just fantastic. I'm not gonna try to flex and show you what I can do shadowboxing, but yes, I do work out. I got some gloves up there, and it's a great little thing to have. All right, so that's the complete tour. I hope that wasn't too much, but I tried to go as in detail as possible so that you guys have any questions. What I'd like to have here too is let's keep a track of all of the costs so that we can put one giant cost. All the equipment, all the bodies, all the lighting, all the lenses, all of the cost to have this studio built comes up to a grand total of, and I've never seen that number, so I don't know how much it is. But anyway, that's what you can expect to get to this point over time. And without further ado, we look forward to the next shooting and editing section in the course, which is where it really starts getting serious. Thank you everybody for watching, and always remember to learn, apply, and succeed.